Undercover boss orders breakfast at his own restaurant, freezes when waitress complains about tips. The rain pelted against the windshield of Derek Langston's rented Ford pickup as he pulled into the parking lot of Sunrise Diner number 28. The vehicle matched his disguise: faded jeans, flannel shirt, and a trucker cap pulled low over his graying beard and glasses. No one would recognize the CEO of Sunrise Restaurant Group in this getup. That was precisely the point. Derek checked his watch. 7:30 a.m. Prime breakfast rush. Perfect timing to see how one of his most troubling locations operated under pressure. On paper, this branch was profitable, and his regional manager Stan had nothing but praise for its operations. But something didn't add up. The turnover rate was nearly triple that of other locations, and customer reviews mentioned a weird vibe among staff. Corporate values surveys showed employee satisfaction in the basement. Just growing pains, Stan had insisted during their last quarterly review. Doug's got it under control. Doug Henderson, the manager who always had polished reports and explanations. Derek had promoted him 3 years ago based on impressive performance metrics at a smaller location. Now he managed the chain's second highest volume restaurant, and Derek needed to see for himself what was really happening behind the smiling photos in the monthly newsletters. The diner's neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting an uneven glow across the rain-slicked parking lot. Half the spaces were already filled: truckers, early shift workers, and regulars seeking refuge from the dreary Monday morning. Derek pulled his cap lower and rehearsed his cover story one last time. Walt Simmons, recently retired long-haul trucker, passing through town to visit his daughter. A bell chimed as he pushed open the door, and the familiar scent of coffee, bacon, and pancakes washed over him. The warmth inside was a welcome contrast to the chilly autumn rain. Derek scanned the restaurant, taking mental notes. The floor was clean enough, but the corners of the entryway showed neglect. The Employee of the Month board still displayed August's winner, despite it being mid-October. Small details that spoke volumes. "Just one today?" A young hostess with a forced smile approached. Her name tag read Amber, and her uniform was missing the standard Sunrise pin. "Yes, ma'am," Derek replied in the gravelly voice he'd practiced, adding a slight southern drawl. "Just passing through." Amber seated him at a small booth near the kitchen entrance, a perfect vantage point. She slapped a laminated menu on the table and muttered something about a server coming by soon. No welcome script, no eye contact. Strike one. From his seat, Derek had a clear view of the main service area and part of the kitchen. The restaurant was busy but not chaotic. 3 servers worked the floor, moving at different paces. 2 of them, young men in pristine uniforms, seemed to be taking their time, chatting near the coffee station while balancing only 2 tables each. The 3rd server was a different story altogether. She moved with practiced efficiency, carrying 3 plates up one arm while balancing a coffee pot in her other hand. Her name tag read Cassie, and she was easily handling twice as many tables as her colleagues. Her uniform was clean but visibly worn around the edges, the embroidered Sunrise logo slightly frayed. Unlike the plastered smiles of the others, Cassie's expressions shifted naturally between professional courtesy and focused determination. After a few minutes, she approached his table, slightly breathless but composed.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Good morning. Sorry about the wait. Coffee to start you off? Her smile was genuine but tired, dark circles just visible beneath carefully applied concealer. Yes, please. Black as night, Derek replied, staying in character. As she poured, he noticed her hands, steady despite the slight tremor of exhaustion. She had to be nearing the end of an overnight shift, yet she maintained her composure. "Our special today is the trucker's delight. 3 eggs your way, bacon, sausage, hash browns, and buttermilk pancakes," she recited, adding with a wink, "It's enough to fuel you for another 300 miles. Derek chuckled. "Perfect recommendation. I'll take that, eggs over medium. Coming right up." She scribbled on her pad. "Been on the road long?" The small talk was textbook Sunrise hospitality protocol. Engage, make a personal connection, enhance the experience. At least someone here was following training. "Just retired last month," Derek replied. 40 years behind the wheel. Now I'm seeing the country without a deadline. Cassie's eyes lit up briefly. "That sounds wonderful. Freedom after all that time." Something in her voice caught. A small hitch that suggested the concept of freedom resonated deeply. As she departed for the kitchen, Derek watched the dynamics unfold. The 2 male servers continued their leisurely pace, occasionally glancing at Cassie with what looked like amusement rather than concern. When a family with young children entered, the hostess directed them to Cassie's section despite empty tables in the other areas. Through the kitchen window, Derek glimpsed a man in his 40s with a manager's badge. Doug Henderson was leaner than in his corporate headshot, his expression sharper. He spoke briefly to one of the male servers, a young man with similar features, and they shared a laugh while looking in Cassie's direction. Derek's instincts, honed over 30 years in the restaurant business, prickled with concern. The atmosphere wasn't just inefficient, it felt deliberately imbalanced. When Cassie returned with his breakfast, perfectly prepared and arranged as per company standards, Derek decided to probe gently. "Busy morning for you," he observed casually. "You're working twice as hard as those fellas over there." Cassie's smile flickered, her eyes darting quickly to ensure no one was within earshot. "It's just how schedules work out," she said carefully. "Some sections are busier than others." "Tips must be good, at least?" Derek asked, taking a bite of perfectly cooked bacon. The pause before her answer was brief but telling. Cassie adjusted the coffee pot in her hand, knuckles widening slightly around the handle. "Morning shifts are actually the worst for tips," she finally said, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. "Especially when we split them, but only certain people actually get them." Before Derek could respond, she was called away to another table. He watched her go, his breakfast cooling as the CEO inside him began to boil. Something was very wrong at Sunrise number 28, and it went far beyond scheduling issues or training gaps. Derek Langston had come looking for operational inefficiencies. Instead, he'd found what appeared to be something much darker, a system of favoritism that might cross the line into something illegal. And Cassie had just unknowingly served the first piece of evidence directly to the boss. Derek lingered over his coffee, observing the morning rush with practiced eyes. The more he watched, the more the patterns became clear. Cassie handled 12 tables while the 2 male servers, Ryan and Jason according to their name tags, managed only 4 each. When customers paid by card at the table, Ryan and Jason processed the transactions. When Cassie's tables paid, one of them would mysteriously appear to take over. As the breakfast crowd thinned, Derek caught Cassie's eye and raised his empty mug. She hurried over, coffee pot already in hand. "Can I get you anything else, sir?" she asked, topping off his coffee with the last from the pot. "Just the check when you have a moment," Derek replied, then added, "And maybe a minute of your time if you're not too busy." Wariness flashed across her face. "I can bring your check, but I'm not sure about chatting. We're pretty strict about." "I understand," Derek interrupted gently. Just curious about the area. My daughter's thinking of moving here. The lie worked. Cassie's shoulders relaxed slightly. I'll be right back with your check. When she returned, Derek noticed she tucked a fresh order pad into her apron, her way of justifying lingering at his table if questioned. Smart. So your daughter's moving to the area? She asked, setting down the check. Derek nodded, taking his time with his wallet. She's considering it. Job opportunity. I'm scoping it out, seeing if it's the kind of place where she'd be treated right. He met Cassie's eyes meaningfully. I noticed things. Like how hard you work compared to some others here. Cassie's practiced smile faltered. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned slightly closer. It's not supposed to be like this, she said softly. This branch used to be different before Doug took over. How long have you worked here? Derek asked, keeping his tone casual while sliding a $20 bill onto the check. 3 years. Started in high school and kept going through community college. Pride flickered across her tired features. 1 more semester until my accounting degree. An accountant? That's impressive. If I can afford to finish. Cassie's voice dropped further. That's getting harder each month. Derek sensed the opening. Tips not making up the difference? Looked like you were handling most of the crowd this morning. Something broke in Cassie's expression, a crack in a dam that had been holding back too much for too long.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
She pulled her order pad out, pretending to write something while speaking. We're supposed to pool digital tips and split them between servers on shift, she explained, voice barely audible. But Doug created this system where only certain people get assigned to the digital POS. The rest of us get told cash will be evened out at the end of day. Her pen pressed hard against the paper. It never is. Derek felt a cold anger building behind his calm facade. How much have you lost? Just this month? Over $600. Her voice trembled slightly. I've tracked it. Every shift, every check? I know exactly what the system reports versus what I receive. Why haven't you reported it? Cassie's bitter laugh was so quiet it was almost just an exhale. To who? Doug's nephew Ryan is always on the favorable schedule. His uncle makes sure he gets the digital POS login most mornings. She nodded subtly toward one of the young men Derek had been watching. Regional management only talks to Doug, and corporate. She shrugged. They don't care about someone like me. If only she knew who she was talking to, Derek thought. Anyone else affected? He asked. Most of us. Anyone who isn't in Doug's circle. She straightened suddenly as the swinging door from the kitchen opened. I have to go. Hope your daughter finds somewhere better to work than here. Derek watched her hurry away, anger solidifying into resolve. He left the 20 on the table, knowing it would likely never reach Cassie's pocket, and added another 20 tucked discreetly under his coffee cup where only she would find it. As he headed for the door, he passed Ryan at the register, laughing with the hostess. Great shift today, he overheard the young man say. Digital tips are booming. Outside in the parking lot, the rain had stopped, but Derek's storm was just beginning. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number rarely used, the direct line to Mara Jenkins, Sunrise's head of internal investigations. Mara, it's Derek. I need you to drop everything and meet me in 1 hour. He started the rental truck, watching as Doug emerged from the kitchen, slapping Ryan on the back. We have a serious situation at Sunrise number 28. I'm going to need access to their POS records, security footage, and employee complaints for the past 6 months. He paused. And Mara? Complete discretion. No one can know I was here today. As he pulled away from the diner, Derek's rearview mirror caught a glimpse of Cassie through the window, clearing his table, finding the hidden 20. For a moment, her exhaustion lifted, replaced by confusion, then cautious hope. It was the smallest victory, but it hardened his determination. The CEO had come for breakfast. He was staying for justice. The Lakeside Inn's conference room had been transformed into an impromptu command center. Laptop screens illuminated the concerned faces of Mara Jenkins and her two-person investigative team. Derek paced by the windows, his Walt disguise abandoned in favor of slacks and a button-down shirt, though he kept the beard, a precaution in case he needed to revisit the diner. "Show me again," Derek instructed, stopping behind Mara's chair. On her screen, employee payroll records stretched back 6 months. "It's clever how they've disguised it," Mara said, highlighting several columns. "See here? Doug created this auxiliary server classification in the system. It's not even in our corporate handbook." Derek leaned closer. "And Cassie falls under this category?" "Along with 7 others," Mara confirmed. "When they're logged as auxiliary, the system doesn't assign digital tips to them. Instead, tips automatically route to whoever is listed as the primary POS operator for that shift." "Let me guess," Derek said grimly. "Ryan Henderson." 67% of the time, yes." Mara pulled up another spreadsheet. "And these other 3 servers share the remaining shifts. All part of what employees are calling Doug's Circle." The second investigator, Luis, turned his laptop toward Derek. "We accessed the camera footage you requested. Watch this." The security video showed the end of a busy lunch shift. Staff gathered around Doug, who held a metal cash box. The video had no audio, but the body language was clear. Doug counted bills, handed specific amounts to certain servers, including Ryan, while others received significantly less. A young woman who appeared to be Cassie gestured at the box, clearly questioning the distribution. Doug's response was a dismissive wave and a comment that made Ryan laugh. "Can we get audio on any of this?" Derek asked. "No," Luis replied. "But we don't need it. Look at the numbers." His screen displayed a receipt analysis from the previous day. Customer tips on credit cards totaled $847 for the breakfast and lunch shifts combined. According to payroll records, only $412 was distributed to staff, with Ryan receiving $178 of that. "Where's the other $435? Derek demanded. "That's where it gets interesting," Mara said, pulling up bank records. "Small deposits are made weekly to this account." She pointed to a name, Douglas Henderson LLC. His personal business entity, created 3 months after he took over this location. Derek felt sick. This wasn't just favoritism, it was theft, plain and simple. "What about employee complaints?" he asked. The third investigator, Tanya, who had been quiet until now, handed him a folder. "That's the strangest part. On paper, there aren't many. 3 formal complaints in 6 months, all marked resolved by regional management. Stan wouldn't ignore something like this," Derek muttered. "He didn't see it," Tanya explained. "The complaints never reached him. They were intercepted and handled by Doug's assistant manager." She pointed to a signature. "Guess who that is?" "Ryan Henderson." Derek read, disgust evident in his voice. "The nephew. It gets worse," Tanya continued, pulling out exit interviews. "We found a pattern in departing employees. Most cited personal reasons or schedule conflicts for leaving. But I called 6 former employees this morning. 5 told the same story, Questioning tip distribution led to punishment shifts, early mornings, split shifts, sections with lowest tip potential. Eventually, they'd quit. And Cassie hasn't quit because she can't afford to. Mara finished. Her student loans come due next month. She's one of the few with open availability, so even with the tip theft, she makes just enough to scrape by. Derek stared at the evidence before him, connecting dots beyond what his team had uncovered. This explains the customer complaints about staff morale, the inconsistent service, the high turnover. He shook his head. All symptoms of a deeper disease. Conservatively, we estimate at least $18,000 in misappropriated tips over the past quarter, Luis added. And that's just what we can trace through the digital system. We have enough to terminate them immediately, Mara stated. The question is how you want to handle it. Derek walked to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. The easy path would be to send in corporate HR, handle it quietly, terminate the offenders, and move on. Minimum publicity, minimum disruption. But that wouldn't be justice for Cassie or the others who had suffered. I have a different approach in mind, he said finally. Here's what we're going to do. He outlined his plan as the team took notes. By the time he finished, Mara was smiling grimly. It's unorthodox, she admitted, but it sends the right message. Not just to Doug and Ryan, Derek emphasized, but to every manager in our company. And most importantly, to every Cassie who's been afraid to speak up. When do we move? Luis asked. Derek checked his watch. Friday morning? Breakfast rush. I want everyone to see what happens when someone steals from my employees. As the team dispersed to prepare, Derek returned to the evidence on the table, particularly the image of Cassie gesturing at the tip box, standing alone against a system rigged against her. Just a few more days, he promised the photo quietly. Then we'll see who's really running this show. Thursday morning arrived with a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. Derek studied himself in the hotel mirror, adjusting his disguise with meticulous care. The beard remained, but today, Walt wore slightly nicer clothes, a button-down flannel and newer jeans. A returning customer, perhaps with a bit more money to spend. You sure about this? Mara asked from her position by the window. In her smart casual outfit and glasses, she looked exactly like what her cover suggested, a middle-aged daughter having breakfast with her father. Absolutely, Derek replied, tucking the prepaid loyalty card into his wallet. We need irrefutable evidence that connects the dots. Something that proves Doug and Ryan are knowingly redirecting tips. We already have enough to fire them, Mara reminded him. This isn't just about firing two people, Derek said firmly. This is about proving to everyone, especially the staff, that what happened was real, intentional, and is being addressed at the highest level. An hour later, Derek and Mara entered Sunrise Diner number 28, the bell chiming their arrival. The hostess, different from Mondays, led them to a corner booth. Your server will be with you shortly, she said mechanically before hurrying away. Derek scanned the restaurant. The breakfast rush was in full swing, the dynamics painfully familiar. Cassie darted between tables, coffee pot in hand, while Ryan leisurely chatted with customers in his section. Doug watched from near the register, his casual posture betrayed by eyes that missed nothing. That's Doug, Derek muttered to Mara. And the server by the window is Ryan. Mara nodded, pulling out her phone to check her messages, while actually activating the recording app developed by their legal team. Everything said at their table would now be preserved as evidence. Walt! Cassie's surprised voice drew their attention. You're back! Couldn't stay away from those pancakes, Derek replied warmly. This is my daughter, Mara. Thought I'd show her this place since I raved about it so much. Pleased to meet you, Cassie said, then hesitated. Usually I'd take your order, but... She glanced toward Doug, who was watching with narrowed eyes. Ryan will be your server today. Doug likes to rotate returning customers. Derek caught the resignation in her voice. Any particular reason? Cassie managed a strained smile. Just policy. Can I get you coffee while you wait for Ryan? That would be wonderful, Mara said kindly. As Cassie hurried to fetch coffee, Derek noticed Doug speaking to Ryan, gesturing subtly toward their table.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
The trap was being set, exactly as he'd predicted. Good morning, folks. Ryan approached with practiced charm. I'm Ryan, I'll be taking care of you today. I see Cassie's already getting your coffee. She mentioned something about rotating returning customers? Derek asked innocently. Ryan's smile didn't waver. Oh, we like to make sure everyone gets the full sunrise experience. Different servers bring different energy, you know? Makes sense. Derek nodded, playing along. Say, I heard about your new loyalty program from a buddy of mine. Got myself a card online. Ryan's eyes lit up with interest. Smart move. Those cards give you a 5% discount, plus they're preloaded with funds. Makes checkout smoother. The conversation progressed predictably through orders and small talk. Derek ordered the Grand Slam Special, while Mara chose a simpler eggs and toast combination. Throughout the meal, Derek observed the carefully orchestrated dance, Cassie handling twice the tables but processing none of the payments, while Ryan controlled the digital transactions. When their meal concluded, Derek pulled out the loyalty card with deliberate slowness. I'd like to pay with this, he told Ryan, and add a $50 tip. Ryan's eyebrows shot up. Wow, that's very generous. Good service deserves recognition, Derek said pointedly. I assume all servers share in the tips equally? A flicker of discomfort crossed Ryan's face before his customer service mask returned. Absolutely. Everyone gets their fair share at the end of shift. Derek slid the card across the table. Glad to hear it. As Ryan processed the payment, Mara caught Derek's eye and gave a subtle nod. Phase 1 complete. Back at the lakeside an hour later, Derek's team had already accessed the transaction logs. On the large conference room screen, they watched in real time as Derek's $50 tip was processed, assigned, and then digitally rerouted to employee ID #RH274, Ryan Henderson. Got him, Louise said, highlighting the transaction path. The system automatically reassigned the tip based on the server classification codes. Cassie's ID shows 0 allocation from this transaction. Meanwhile, in another room, Mara was on a video call with 3 former employees. Their testimonies matched perfectly. The loyalty card system had been Doug's idea, implemented 6 months ago specifically to capture digital tips under the guise of modernization. He told us it was for accounting purposes, one ex-server explained. But only certain people ever got assigned to process those cards. Derek stood at the window, watching a family of ducks navigate the hotel's small pond. Tomorrow, everything would change for the staff at Sunrise number 28. Some would leave in disgrace. Others might finally see justice. Send the files to legal, he instructed the team. I want everything ready for tomorrow morning. He turned, determination hardening his features. It's time to serve breakfast to the real thieves. Friday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine after a week of rain. At precisely 8:45 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled into the Sunrise Diner parking lot. Heads turned inside the restaurant as the vehicles parked directly in front of the entrance. Cassie was refilling coffee when she noticed the commotion. Her first thought was health inspectors, though they never arrived in a convoy. Her second, more terrifying thought was immigration officials, though everyone at Sunrise had proper documentation. Still, her hand trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. The restaurant fell quiet as the doors swung open. First came 2 men and a woman in business attire, carrying tablets and folders. Then a distinguished older woman with silver-streaked hair and a no-nonsense expression. And finally, a tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Cassie's coffee pot clattered to the floor. It was Walt, her kind customer from earlier in the week, but transformed. Gone was the trucker cap and flannel shirt. Gone was the folksy drawl. In their place stood a confident executive with calculating eyes and an expression that commanded attention. "Who the hell?" Doug emerged from the back office, stopping mid-sentence as recognition dawned on his face. "Mr. Langston? We weren't expecting." "Clearly," Derek replied, his voice cool and controlled. The corporate entourage spread out strategically around the restaurant, blocking exits and creating a perimeter. Customers watched, forks suspended midway to mouths, as Derek surveyed the restaurant like a general assessing a battlefield. "Ladies and gentlemen," he addressed the diners, "I apologize for the interruption. I'm Derek Langston, CEO of Sunrise Restaurant Group. We're conducting an emergency corporate review that cannot wait. Please enjoy complimentary meals on us today." He nodded to one of his team members, who began distributing vouchers. Doug stepped forward, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Langston, what an unexpected pleasure. If I'd known you were coming." "You'd have what, Doug?" Derek cut him off. "Created a different staff schedule? Temporarily adjusted the tip distribution system? Perhaps deleted some revealing transaction records?" The color drained from Doug's face. Ryan, who had been frozen by the coffee station, took an instinctive step toward the back exit. "I wouldn't," Mara stated flatly, blocking his path. "Security has already been instructed to detain anyone leaving without authorization." Derek walked to the center of the restaurant. "I visited this location on Monday. Not as your CEO, but as a customer named Walt." He looked directly at Cassie, whose eyes were wide with shock. "What I discovered was disturbing enough to trigger a thorough corporate investigation." He opened a leather portfolio, removing several documents. "Doug Henderson and Ryan Henderson, approach please." The uncle and nephew exchanged glances before reluctantly stepping forward. "For the past 6 months," Derek continued, his voice carrying throughout the now silent restaurant, "you have systematically diverted employee tips through manipulation of our POS system and loyalty program. You've created fraudulent employee classifications to redirect digital gratuities. You've intimidated staff who questioned these practices and intercepted complaints before they could reach regional management." Doug's face contorted with anger. "These are baseless accusations. You can't possibly." $18,742.63, Derek interrupted. "That's the exact amount of tips misappropriated from your staff in the past quarter alone. We have the transaction logs, testimony from former employees, and video evidence." He gestured to Mara, who turned her tablet to display a damning spreadsheet. "We even conducted our own transaction yesterday, a $50 tip that magically found its way to Ryan's account despite being entered on a table Cassie was serving." Ryan's face had gone ashen. "Uncle Doug, you said no one would ever check the—" He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. Doug shot his nephew a venomous look before attempting damage control.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Mr. Langston, there's clearly been a misunderstanding about company policy. If you'll allow me to explain our unique approach to team incentives. Theft is not a unique approach, Derek stated coldly. It's a crime. One that has harmed the hardworking people who are the backbone of this company. He turned to address the staff, who had gathered in a loose semicircle. As of this moment, Doug and Ryan Henderson are terminated from Sunrise Restaurant Group. The company will be pressing charges for theft and fraud. He nodded to two members of his team, who stepped forward to escort the men from the building. "You can't do this!" Doug shouted, desperation replacing his usually controlled demeanor. "This is my restaurant. I built it up from nothing." "No," Derek countered firmly. "You inherited a successful location with loyal staff, and you exploited both. The people who truly built this restaurant are standing right here." He gestured to the servers, cooks, and hosts who watched in stunned silence. "And they deserve better than what you've given them." As Doug and Ryan were escorted out, Cassie stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "You were never a trucker, were you?" Derek's stern expression softened. "No, Cassie. But everything else I saw was real, including the theft of your hard-earned tips." For the first time in months, Cassie allowed herself to smile without reservation. "So what happens now?" 1 month later, Derek Langston returned to Sunrise Diner number 28, this time with no disguise and no entourage. The bell chimed as he entered, and the atmosphere that greeted him bore little resemblance to the tense, divided workplace he'd encountered as Walt. The morning light streamed through freshly cleaned windows, illuminating a dining room where servers moved with purpose and genuine smiles. Near the entrance, a new digital display showed the day's staff, complete with photos and a transparent explanation of the tip-sharing system. "Good morning, Mr. Langston." The greeting came from Cassie, who approached with confident strides. She wore a crisp new uniform with a manager's pin gleaming on the collar. "Good morning, Manager Taylor," Derek replied, unable to suppress a smile at her transformation. The dark circles beneath her eyes had faded, replaced by a spark of determination that reminded him of himself 30 years earlier. "Your usual table is ready," she said, leading him to the same booth where he'd first sat as Walt. "Though I hope you won't mind if I join you briefly? The morning rush doesn't start for another 20 minutes. As they settled in, Derek noticed small but significant changes throughout the restaurant. Staff rotated between sections based on a chart visible to all. The POS terminals had been replaced with a new system featuring individual login cards for each server. "How's the new tip distribution system working?" Derek asked as Cassie poured his coffee, a gesture she insisted on performing personally whenever he visited. "Transparency makes all the difference," she replied. "Every employee can see exactly what tips came in and how they're divided. The digital dashboard updates in real time." She gestured to a screen mounted near the kitchen. "No more mysterious disappearances or unexplained shortfalls." Derek nodded approvingly. After the terminations, he tasked Cassie with helping design a new tip management protocol, one that would eventually be implemented across all 147 Sunrise locations. "And your classes?" he asked. "Final semester starts next week." Her eyes lit up. "The compensation package for my promotion included enough to cover it, plus the back pay settlement from Doug and Ryan more than made up for what they took." The legal proceedings against the Hendersons had been swift and public. Rather than face a protracted court battle, they'd agreed to a settlement that included full restitution to all affected employees, plus penalties. The story had made headlines in the restaurant industry, a cautionary tale about accountability and justice. "How's the staff adjusting?" Derek asked, glancing toward the kitchen where several new faces moved alongside veterans. "Better than expected. We've retained everyone except those who were directly involved in the scheme, and our new hires are thriving." Cassie's expression grew serious. "The anonymous reporting system you implemented has been a game-changer. People feel safe speaking up now." That had been one of Derek's first actions after the confrontation, creating a direct hotline for employees to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Tips went straight to corporate compliance, bypassing local management entirely when necessary. "Regional oversight has improved too," Derek noted. "Stan's been checking in weekly as required?" "Like clockwork," Cassie confirmed. "Though he still looks terrified every time he walks through the door." She allowed herself a small laugh. "Can't blame him, after the retraining you put him through." Stan hadn't been corrupt, just complacent, taking Doug's reports at face value without digging deeper. His punishment wasn't termination but education, a comprehensive course in employee advocacy and fraud detection, followed by 6 months of enhanced supervision. As the first customers began trickling in, Cassie rose to greet them. "Will you be staying for the full breakfast service today?" "Just watching for a while," Derek replied. "I have other locations to visit. This is my third this week." After the Sunrise No. 28 revelation, Derek had quietly launched similar investigations at 10 randomly selected locations. 2 had shown minor issues. 1 had revealed another tip scheme, though less sophisticated than Doug's. The message was spreading throughout the company. Accountability wasn't just a corporate buzzword anymore. Before leaving, Derek stopped by the kitchen to shake hands with each staff member. In the back office, formerly Doug's domain, he glimpsed Cassie's accounting textbooks stacked neatly beside manager training manuals. "We're tracking to beat last quarter's numbers by 17%, she told him proudly, walking him to the door. "Turns out happy employees create happy customers." "Who knew?" "Some of us suspected," Derek replied with a wink. Outside, he paused to look back through the window. Cassie had returned to her duties, confidently directing staff as the breakfast rush began in earnest. On the wall behind her hung a new framed mission statement, one developed collaboratively by corporate and staff representatives after the incident. "Respect begins with honesty," it read. "Success follows naturally." As Derek drove away, his phone buzzed with a message from Mara. Another tip had come through the hotline, this time from a small location in Nebraska. The details were different, but the core issue remained the same: powerful people taking advantage of those with less protection. "Send a team," Derek replied. "I'll meet them there tomorrow." He glanced in the rearview mirror at Sunrise No. 28, now growing smaller in the distance. The restaurant looked the same from the outside, same sign, same building, same location. But inside, everything had changed because one exhausted server had dared to speak the truth to a man she thought was just passing through. Sometimes, Derek reflected, the most important ingredients in any restaurant weren't on the menu at all. They were trust, dignity, and the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it seemed no one important was watching.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow.